I planned every detail of this wedding perfectly: the flowers, the venue, the seating. Months of hard work were leading up to what I thought would be the happiest day of my life. I never doubted him or our love. Then everything changed in the simplest way. His phone buzzed while he was in the shower. Normally, I wouldn't look, I trusted him completely, but the message preview made my stomach turn. "Can't wait to see you tonight." I froze. My heart raced. Maybe it was a mistake or a wrong number, but deep down, I knew the truth. Against my better judgment, I unlocked his phone. There they were, dozens of messages going back months, plans, sweet words, lies woven into my life so perfectly that I almost laughed. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was how confident he was, how careless. He never thought I'd find out because he never thought I'd question him. He truly believed I'd never leave. I put the phone back, my hands steady, no tears, no outburst, just a quiet, cold clarity. I looked at myself in the mirror, expecting to see pain or anger, but all I felt was certainty. The wedding wasn't happening. I was done. I didn't say a word when he came out of the shower, smiling like everything was normal. That same smile that once made me feel safe now felt like another lie. He moved around the room, clueless that his perfect world was already falling apart. I realized something important: I didn't owe him a confrontation or an argument. He didn't deserve to see me break. So, I went on with my day. I confirmed the catering, approved the flowers, and listened to my mom excitedly talk about the rehearsal dinner. I played the role of a happy bride, not because I was in denial, but because I was in control. Let him think everything was fine. Let him believe I was still clueless. Tomorrow, when the wedding he thought was a sure thing didn't happen, he would finally realize who he had underestimated. That night, I lay next to him, staring at the ceiling, listening to him sleep peacefully. He had no idea that by morning, everything he took for granted would be gone. I turned to look at him. For years, I loved this man and built my future around him. But now, in the quiet darkness, I felt nothing: no anger, no sadness, just freedom. I thought about waking him up, about telling him I knew, but I didn't. He didn't deserve that much power over me. He wasn't worth my anger. He wasn't worth my time. Let him sleep, completely unaware. By the time he woke up, I would be gone. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no closure neatly wrapped up. I closed my eyes, feeling the tension leave my body. Tomorrow, everything would change. The wedding was off, my life was mine again, and the best part? He wouldn't see it coming. Morning came, bright and indifferent. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, just like any other day. But today wasn't like any other day. Today was supposed to be my wedding day. Instead, it was the day I walked away. I moved quietly, slipping out of bed without waking him. My suitcase was already packed by the door. Part of the plan I made overnight. No dramatic goodbyes, no explanations, just a clean break. He didn't deserve a farewell. He didn't deserve my pain. The only thing he deserved was the silence I was leaving behind. Downstairs, I sent 3 emails, one to the wedding planner, one to the venue, and one to the caterer. The wedding is cancelled. Please contact the groom for any outstanding matters. That was it. No apologies, no long explanations. Let him figure it out. Let him clean up the mess he never thought he'd have to face. My phone started buzzing, calls from my mom, texts from friends. They were all expecting a wedding, expecting a bride, but I wasn't that bride anymore. I stepped outside and took a deep breath of the cool morning air. Freedom smelled like coffee and wet pavement. It smelled like new beginnings. As I walked to the waiting car, leaving behind the life I almost settled for, I felt lighter than I had in years. Halfway to the airport, the calls started coming in rapid succession. His name flashed on the screen again and again, more desperate each time. I imagined him waking up to an empty bed, the confusion turning to panic as he noticed my suitcase was gone, the silence heavy, the emails waiting for him to read. I didn't answer. Let him worry, let him replay every moment, trying to figure out when he lost control. He would call my mom next, then my friends, spinning his own version of the story. She got cold feet. She's overwhelmed. She'll come back. But he didn't know yet, there was no coming back from this. Outside the car window, the city sped by, people going about their lives, completely unaware that mine had just changed forever, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. The old me, the one who would have been paralyzed by fear, drowning in shame, worried about what people would think, was gone. This wasn't running away, this was reclaiming something I had been losing for years, myself. At a red light, I looked down at my engagement ring. It sparkled beautifully, A reminder of the man who never deserved my trust. Probably wondering why a woman in a honeymoon dress was dining alone, but I just smiled, confidently ordering the chef's special. Let them wonder. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. With each bite, I tasted freedom. I savored the richness, not just of the food but of this moment that was entirely mine. I was no longer tied down by expectations, no longer pretending to be someone I wasn't just to make him happy. I looked around at the other couples, laughing and whispering over candlelight. Once, I would have envied them, but tonight, I felt nothing but gratitude that I wasn't sitting across from him, faking smiles and ignoring the warning signs that had been there all along. By the time dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate creation almost too beautiful to eat, I realized I was celebrating something far more important than a wedding. I was celebrating my courage, my resilience, my choice to walk away from a life that would have slowly suffocated me. I lifted my glass, the wine shimmering in the low light, and toasted quietly to myself, to freedom, to new beginnings, to choosing me. The next morning, I stood on the balcony, the sun rising over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was breathtaking, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. There were no chains of expectations, no shadows of betrayal, just me and the limitless horizon. The waves whispered a promise of possibility, of adventures waiting to be discovered. I didn't know where this new path would lead, but I knew one thing for certain: I was finally free to find out. And that was worth more than any wedding ring could ever be. Wasted on a wedding that would never happen, the embarrassment of explaining to friends and family why his bride had vanished without a word, the perfect image he had crafted shattered beyond repair. And me? I was here, feeling the warm breeze against my skin, my feet sinking into the sand, free from the weight of his deception. I didn't need closure or a dramatic confrontation. I didn't need to hear his excuses or his apologies. My absence was my answer, and it was louder than any words I could have spoken. Standing there beneath the moonlit sky, I realized that sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to simply walk away. I turned and walked back to the hotel, feeling the cool night air wrap around me. There was a quiet power in my solitude, in choosing my own happiness over his lies. Back in my suite, I poured myself another glass of champagne and stood by the window, watching the waves dance under the moonlight. This was my story now, mine to shape and write however I pleased. I wasn't running away, I was running toward something better, toward a life where I didn't have to pretend, where I could be unapologetically myself. As I took another sip, I knew I would be okay, not just okay, better than I ever could have been with him. I set the glass down, letting the realization sink in: I had saved myself, and that was worth celebrating. I sat alone at the restaurant, enjoying my own company. A man nearby asked if I was waiting for someone. I smiled and said, "No, just me." He looked curious, but nodded. A woman who enjoys her own company, I like that. I did too. Between courses, I watched other couples. Some were laughing, others were glued to their phones, and some weren't speaking at all. I imagined an alternate life where I went through with the wedding. I would have been sitting here with him, pretending to be a happy newlywed, but deep down, I knew I would have been miserable. Later, I walked along the beach, my bare feet sinking into the warm sand. The waves stretched endlessly, and the moonlight danced on the water. I realized I had almost built a life around a lie, almost shrunk myself to make someone else comfortable. But now, I was standing in my own story, free to write it however I wanted. I took a deep breath of the salty air and let the past drift away. Back home, while I sipped champagne and found peace by the sea, his world was falling apart. I didn't even have to do anything. I imagined him waking up to an empty bed, calling my name through the house, checking his phone to find unread emails and missed calls. That's when he'd realize I was gone, and I wasn't coming back. He must have called everyone, my mom, my friends, looking for answers, but I hadn't given anyone an explanation. There was nothing for him to twist, no argument for him to manipulate, just silence, clean and final. The messages started rolling in. "Emma, please call me, we can fix this. Where are you?" His desperation was clear, but I was far away, enjoying the ocean view, and his words meant nothing to me now. He thought I'd always forgive him, that I'd never leave. He was wrong. He probably tried to convince himself I just needed space and that I'd come back once I calmed down. But as hours turned to days and I stayed silent, the reality must have hit him hard. The wedding was a disaster: non-refundable venue, paid caterers, guests who traveled just to watch a bride who never showed up. Since everything was under my name, he was left to clean up the mess. His friends might believe his excuses, maybe even call me crazy, but others would see the truth. And someone might even say the words he feared most: "You did this to yourself." Then, there was the other woman, the one he thought was worth risking everything for. Did he run to her now, expecting her to take my place? Or was she already backing away, realizing he was just a disaster without me? I imagined him sitting alone in the chaos he created, staring at his phone, scrolling through old messages, trying to find where it all went wrong. His calls became less frequent, weaker, as he started to accept the truth. He must have gone through every emotion: panic, denial, anger, desperation, but in the end, there was nothing left but regret. I could have left him in that uncertainty forever, but I chose to send one final message: "You threw this away, not me." Then, I blocked him everywhere. He was erased, and I was free. I didn't rush to go back home. There was nothing waiting for me, no obligations. So, I extended my trip. I took long walks on the beach, got massages, and tried new foods. I thought being alone would be hard, that I'd get lost in my thoughts, but each day, he felt more like a distant memory. One night, at a quiet bar, I noticed a man smiling at me. He was handsome, but I wasn't looking for anything. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to prove my worth to anyone. I was just me, and that was enough. The days blended into a peaceful rhythm. I read books without checking the time, swam until I was exhausted, and napped with the sea breeze drifting in. Sometimes, I'd think of him, not with anger or longing, but with the quiet realization of how small he seemed now. I booked a boat tour one afternoon, watching the dolphins dance in the water. I felt something shift inside me, something letting go. I wasn't running away anymore. I was just living, fully and freely. On my last morning, before the sun was up, I stood on the balcony, holding a cup of coffee and feeling the cool air. This was it, the end of one story and the beginning of another. I had come here as a runaway bride, escaping a life that almost trapped me, but now, I was free. Before heading to the airport, I found the last photo of us on my phone. I looked at it, waiting for the pain or regret, but I felt nothing, just a stranger next to a woman who no longer existed. I deleted it with no hesitation. As I wheeled my suitcase through the lobby, the concierge smiled. "Leaving so soon?" I smiled back. "Not really, just going somewhere new." And with that, I walked forward, into a future that was mine alone.